Hello, beautiful Taurians. These are going to be your messages or our messages. I'm a Taurus too, for the next little while. So if it doesn't make sense to you at the beginning of October, let's say, then listen to it down the road. Some of these messages may make sense to you towards the end of the year. They're not really date specific. I just put October just to kind of put them somewhere. But do keep in mind that this is more likely than not going to unfold over the next 2 to 3 months. So let's say over the next 2 to 3 months or towards the end of the year. I want to stop at November. So between whenever you hear it and the end of November, most of these messages, if not all of it, should make sense to you. All right. Where do we start? So let me just first feel into the energy, and let's see how this flows. So the moment I feel into the energy, I get the word opulent. Opulence to me means abundance, but I'm not talking about opulence in terms of something you can hold. I'm talking more about opulence and abundance in terms of what you feel. So right away, I'm getting a feel that a lot of what I will be talking about has to do with inner knowing and, well, essentially knowing yourself. In what respect, I'll get to it in a second, but there's a feeling of either needing to be fulfilled or coming to a point where we are feeling much more fulfilled. And fulfillment is not something that we do. Fulfillment is something we feel. So sometimes we can have seemingly everything that is considered successful or good or fantastic, but we may not feel fulfilled internally. And the reason for that is that whatever we have physically speaking doesn't really always fulfill whatever inner need wants to be fulfilled. We think it does, but oftentimes it doesn't. And that's when it becomes very important to understand yourself. And I'm being asked to talk about projections. So where do I want to start? Okay, number 9 symbolizes to me that for some of you, this process has begun. This process of inner knowing has begun in September, but it means to me that it is essentially you letting go of outdated ideas and beliefs that you have about you internally in terms of what you represent as a person. I feel this is very deep. These messages are going to be very deep, and I feel like I'm getting deeper and deeper each month. But essentially, that is where I love to go. I love to go really, really deep, because at the end of the day, I am passionate about knowing how we work. So I'm passionate about you knowing yourself. And the more you know yourself, the more you are able to live your truth. And for the most part, most people, let's say majority of people, don't really know what their inner truth is because it's hidden. It's hidden from the view. It's very much rooted on a subconscious level. So let's break this down. The energy center or the chakra that is being singled out for the next little while or to pay attention to is the solar plexus. Right away, when I see this, I hear the words confidence, inner stability, self-assurance, feeling self-assured, feeling adequate, feeling solid enough to not hold yourself back. It has a lot to do with manifestation. It has a lot to do with creativity, and it has a lot to do with abundance and opulence when we allow it. So it is creativity. So there's a feeling here of some of you having a creative block or blocking your creativity. So if that's the case for you, this card symbolically represents an area that you might want to spend some time over the next little while in order to get to know yourself better. So obviously this on a more mundane level affects your digestion. So if your solar plexus is not in balance or is out of balance, you will have difficulty with digestion. You may have difficulty with digestion. Anything that is connected to digestion, including digesting your feelings, you may have challenges with. So that's more on the physical, mundane level. On the non-physical level, things like an anxiety, stress, feelings of lack of self-worth, lack of confidence, all those feelings that I just mentioned are connected to this center. So there's obviously an indication being made that something needs tweaking. So we're going to go into what needs tweaking, so to speak. Why does it need tweaking? Good question. It needs tweaking because it needs to be brought back to balance. Except when I say it needs to, please understand that you don't need to do anything. I always say you don't need to do anything. Do it because you choose to have a different experience. Give yourself the ability or the chance to choose something different, which implies there is a choice. Now, sometimes we think we don't have a choice. I'm going to leave it there. Yes, sometimes it feels that way, but there's always some choice, even if it's a choice of looking at something from a different perspective. That too is a choice. Okay, so solar plexus, very important. I'm also feeling a lot of heat. So for some of you, it's signifying digestion. For some of you, you may want to look at simplifying your diet. If you are someone who eats a lot of spices and you have been noticing that it's been troubling you in some way, then don't eat spices, tone it down. If you're not drinking enough water and it is hindering your digestion and it's hindering your digestion, then drink more water. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you know what needs to be done, then you need to do the doing. It's no longer about just sitting and contemplating and sitting and wondering. It's now about knowing and doing. So putting knowing into practice. It feels very, very practical. I feel like I'm going to give you a lot of practical guidance, which at the end of the day, I'm passionate about philosophy. But if I can't give you, philosophical view or a deep understanding in a way that can be used in practice, then it just remains knowledge. It has no practical value. And I like to do both. I'm actually passionate about doing both. So solar plexus is being indicated. For some of you, this indication is about pregnancy. So yes, physical pregnancy. That's not going to be for many of you. I'm seeing the number 7. So some of you may have gotten pregnant in July, or there is a baby coming in July. There's a pregnancy here, and the 7th month of July is being highlighted. Again, this is not for everybody, obviously. For others of you, this is pregnancy in terms of the ability to bring creation into life, the ability to breathe out creation, the ability to birth something new. And solar plexus, like I mentioned, is a center of creativity. So is the 2nd chakra. All right. So what is connected to this creativity? Or what is connected, if there's a blockage in creativity, what is connected to it? This card is called being alone, feeling alone, okay? But it's equivalent to 5 of coins, except I'm not going to go by what it's equivalent to. I'm going to go by what I feel. So it came up in this position. So obviously feeling alone, it's not a good feeling. It's a feeling of being distant from being at home, from feeling like you don't belong, feelings of separation, which often gives one feelings of an anxiety. There's a feeling of loneliness or aloneness. There's a feeling of rejection here. However, because it landed in a different way, to me, it is you effectively dealing with issues of rejection or issues of self-rejection. What do I mean by that? When we self-reject, we reject aspects of ourselves that we don't like, or we deem are bad, or not good enough, or not this or not that. And that essentially is self-rejection. When that happens, we create this void. So think of yourself as, a concept, a construct of a whole bunch of concepts. And some of the concepts you have about you don't like, but they're still concepts of you. It's still a part of you. So when you self-reject, when you reject a concept, let's say Let's say you're not feeling good enough, so you hate that aspect about you. You don't like that aspect about you. You don't want to talk about that aspect about you. When you push that aspect about you aside, you're never really getting rid of it. You're just creating a void. You are trying to distance yourself from the way you don't want to feel. Unfortunately, what happens is when you create this separation, you're creating this void. And this void is a need, and a need needs to be fulfilled. When a need is there, the need will always need to be fulfilled. So what happens is we try to fundamentally fulfill that need with something else, something other than part of ourselves. So generally, we reach for things like drugs, we reach for things like shopping, eating, we reach for things to fulfill this void or to numb the pain that this void represents. And the words that are coming through to me is rejection. So if you have been dealing with feeling of rejection, rejecting yourself, because yes, people can reject you, but rejecting yourself, and you've had this going on for a while, perhaps it's a concept of you, perhaps this is what you feel about you, this is the constant feeling of rejection. Then over the next little while, I feel like you are about to not let it go completely, because that takes time, but there's an opportunity here to highlight some things within you, and I will explain what that means, where you can bring things to the surface. When things are brought up to the surface, things can be observed. When things can be observed, then things can be observed from various angles, and it's easier to determine not only what to do with it, but also perhaps how to go about it. It is very difficult to deal with a problem that is pushed aside when no one can see. And that's why we fall prey to things like addictions, because we try to numb things rather than to deal with them. So what is connected to this feeling of rejection or overcoming rejection? This is self-rejection. The inner knowing is what comes up. So it's essentially you knowing yourself. And you see this Ganesha, this elephant, is sitting on a rock which is surrounded by water. Water is emotion. And he's contemplating. He's going deep within. As not being disturbed, and he's also in nature. So several messages coming through right off the bat. Number one, it is important for you to spend as much time in nature as you can. Obviously, if you're in a weather that is extreme, then deal with it accordingly. But if you can, and whether God willing, however you want to say it, then it's important that you spend some time where there is fresh air. Number one, nature is always in perfect harmony. Nature always seeks balance. Nature is balance. So when we go out in nature, we energetically, nature, here's what I hear. Nature approves of us. Nature never rejects us. Nature is very accepting. Have you ever gone out in nature and you take a breath, you look at the flowers and you look at the tree and you wonder what's in this tree that makes it alive? There's something incredible about nature. Nature also doesn't discriminate. And if you're dealing with issues of self-rejection, you discriminate against yourself. So you being outside, it's not just good for the lungs because it's fresh air. It's good for your psyche, it's good for your energy, it's good for your body, your mind, and your spirit. So spending as much time outside as you possibly can. I'm also drawn to the color of his pants, and that to me screams second chakra. So when we self-reject or self-eject, that will affect trust in ourselves, or we eject or self-reject because we don't trust ourselves, but also it affects trust everywhere else. It affects how we trust the process of life or the river of life. It affects how much we trust ourselves to be able to create certain things. It affects how we trust someone else in our life. It affects how we trust people, situations. You get the general idea. Trust is really important. I mean, I talk about trust all the time, and it's not something that I'll ever stop talking about, because trust is an ingredient that it's like baking a cake without baking powder. Doesn't turn out very well. So there's a huge significance around trust. So inner knowing, being in nature, time for contemplation, spending as much time outdoors as you can over the next little while, to make sure, okay, in order to feel like a complete person, you must first accept that you already are. In other words, if you're looking for the feeling of feeling complete, then you might as well stop looking, because you already are. Now, it doesn't mean that you may not have some things, don't have some things in your life that you would like, or things are not missing. It doesn't mean that. But fundamentally speaking, as a person, as a human being, as a spirit, as a soul, you are absolutely complete. Therefore, when you begin to accept that, idea that you are complete, even though you may want some things, yes, but when you begin to accept that idea that you are complete, then you begin to slowly realize that everything that you are searching for in order to approve you is really just an illusion. And we live in this world, and we live in illusion all the time, so I feel like I could go off on a tangent here, but I'm going to pull myself back. Knowing yourself well leads to acceptance, because until you know yourself well, it's very difficult to know what you are not accepting or what you are rejecting about yourself. And as long as you reject aspects of you, you will never feel whole, even though you already are. So whatever you are rejecting is based on what you believe. And is it really your belief, or is it a belief of someone else? Chances are it's someone else, and you just adopted it because, well, that's what we do. That's what humans do. So the prerequisite to letting go of self-rejection and aloneness and isolation is to know yourself, and also to accept you, primarily accepting you. And that is accepting its form of nourishment. Accepting yourself as you are is essentially being loving to yourself. That's called self-love. Again, you may have things about you that you don't like. I'm not saying you have to like the things you don't like. No. But if you don't like something about you, then accept the fact that you don't like it. And maybe one day you'll change it. There's no point fighting with the fact that you don't like something. That just keeps you in this perpetual self-rejection, and it creates inner turmoil, it creates inner war. And where there is inner war or conflict, there is no peace. And I don't know about you, every single person I've met, including myself, essentially we want peace. That's what we want. And peace often, if not always, comes with acceptance. A sense of peace comes with acceptance. All right. So what are some of the things we're letting go of? And I'm including myself in this because I'm also a Taurus. And actually, when I look at these cards, I went, whoa, it's quite deep. But I'm liking what I'm seeing because it tells me that a good chunk of self-torment is on its way out. And we all torment ourselves on some level. I have yet met a person that doesn't have some inner torment. Some torments are extremely great. Some torments are small, but most of the people, all of the people, in fact, that I have met have some inner conflict, some have inner torment. That's just part of being a human. the idea here is to do that less and to come into more of an acceptance. So what are we getting what are we letting go of, or what are we getting rid of? Let's put it that way. Or rather, what are we accepting? You've got a lot of tens. There's a lot of tens here, which signifies an ending of a chapter, an ending of an era, a karmic ending. If you've been struggling with something like rejection, self-rejection predominantly, of yourself, then you probably have struggled with it for quite some time, then I would use the word karmic, or breaking a cycle, breaking the old chain, breaking an addiction to feeling always like you self-rejected, because once you get used to a feeling, it becomes a part of you. And in order for you not to have that feeling, you have to transform that part of you. And that essentially means you shifting into being a different person. And that's what I call ego death. That's what transformation is. That's essentially what transformation is. Transformation is connecting one way and then shifting your connection or shifting your perception and connecting in a different way. That's essentially what transformation is. You are transforming something that is. So the 10 of Swords comes up, and to me it's all about, if you're someone who is stuck in your logic, or who has been stuck in your logic predominantly, and your logic always overrides your feelings, and then you find yourself in this internal prison called the mind. Not that the mind is not a good thing. Mind is incredible. In fact, mind is the most powerful, absolutely the most powerful tool we will ever have. The most powerful. However, as powerful as it is, if it is used in a wrong way, or if it's used against yourself, then it can do some damage. So this to me is very symbolic of being done having your thoughts overtake you. This is to me an internal prison that has come to a point where you say to yourself, I'm done. Or a situation arises where you essentially say, you know what, that's it, I'm done. Whether I'm done dealing with a certain person, whether I'm done dealing with a certain situation, whether that sucks me dry or sucks you dry, whether I'm done dealing with something in certain way. There is a feeling here of breaking an old pattern when it comes to your thought process, okay? Incidentally, these swords form a circle. Yet again, circle to me is very symbolic of ending, of, should I say, completion. And as you see, this person is, these swords are on top of him, but they're not penetrating him, which means they're not harming him. They're not causing damage, at least bodily damage. It's a fear. It's a fear. In other words, fear is a projection of one's inner conflict. That's what fear is. So the less conflict we have by knowing ourselves and acceptance, the less this is going to happen. And acceptance is the key here. Acceptance really is the key. What else do I want to say about this? Be careful what you think, for your thinking may harm you. That's a very eloquent way of saying, watch your thoughts. Watch what is between your ears. Watch the dialogue that goes on in your mind. As a matter of fact, observe your dialogue and notice what it is. Notice the relationship you have with yourself. Your inner dialogue is very reflective of the relationship you have with you. If you are feeling like this, or if these thoughts have a way of doing you in, then you need to really look at yourself internally and observe the dialogue that's going on between your ears. Because remember, your mind is the most powerful tool. Right? Tool is not even the right word. It just doesn't do it justice. It's the most powerful thing you'll ever have at your disposal. Your mind is the most powerful tool you'll ever have at your disposal. So if you think of it that way, then it would logically make sense if it's that powerful, then you might as well start recognizing it, number one, accept it, number two, and then start finding a way to use it in a way that is not detrimental to you, but that is opulent, opulent, and allows you to feel more abundance. And I mean inner abundance. The next card you have is the Eight of Swords. Again, swords here. This person is trying to get away from thoughts. So what I feel here is there's a lot of vulnerability going on. So over the next little while, you might feel vulnerable with respect to some sort of this situation. This could be an inner conflict that you are trying not to deal with. And this is what we're talking about. This could be this that you don't want to deal with. There's a sense of vulnerability here. Now, she's also, I'm noticing, let me just get my thoughts together. I feel like these swords are, what's the word I want to use? They're haunting her. So what I feel is these are thoughts from your past. These are thoughts connected to your past. I mean, thoughts are always connected to our past most of the time. But these are deep-rooted, conditioned beliefs systems from which our thoughts stem. And I feel like these thoughts are trying to get the best of you. And this is you, trying to get away from it rather than facing it. So here's what I'm going to say. If there is a situation that comes up, or maybe something that that's been long-standing, and your way of dealing with it has been to push it away, this is not the time to do that, because pushing it away just solidifies it further. And sometimes it's hard to face something, yes, but I feel, energetically speaking, we are in a space in our own evolution where the universe is supporting us in order to face these things. And those are usually things that are heavy. These are things that make us feel insecure, feel like we don't belong, like we self-reject. Those are essentially the things that we try to get away from and not deal with it. Again, I want to say the thought itself cannot harm you, but the thought produces a feeling or emotion, which then oftentimes we action. So the thought itself won't harm you, but the action that you connect to the thoughts can and often will. So whatever it is that you are not facing, you are letting go of not facing things. Okay? So if you've had issues with rejection, perhaps it's something you haven't wanted to face. And as I'm saying this, my throat is seizing. So it is affecting your throat. It is affecting your ability to speak. It is affecting your communication. It is affecting your ability to create and express. It is absolutely affecting your ability to express. And I feel many of us are on this precipice of getting our wings and starting to fly. Whatever that metaphor means to you, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And getting our wings, well, number one, nobody's going to give us a wings. We have wings. We just have them folded most of the time, and we're afraid to spread them because of, oh my God, what will people think? So number one, nobody's giving you any wings. You have them. Your job is just to realize that you have them and ask yourself, how have I been stopping myself from using my wings? And that is a metaphor that will mean something to you, hopefully something valuable to you. So how do you deal with when you're wanting to run away from something and you really don't want to face something? Well, the best way to deal with not wanting to face something is to actually face it. And that's a proposition and a half, because it's never easy. It's never fun. We don't want to go and feel the things we really don't want to feel. Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to do that, even though I do it more than most people. It's my fascination. And I also understand that in order for me to have enlightenment so that I can share enlightenment with you, I need to be able to face it. I need to be able to go there first so that I can see it and I can show you the way. But there's no time like today. No, not tomorrow. There's no time like today to face whatever it is that you are afraid of. And rejection is based on self-worth and value. So value, our own inner value, is based on a lot self-acceptance. So if you have not been accepting yourself just as you are because you feel you're something missing, then it's time for you to acknowledge if that's the case, and 2, ask yourself, if I continue this way, what will this give me? Well, I don't think you have to think for too long in order to get the answer back, and chances are it's answer that you don't want. So if you know that the answer is one that you don't want, then you are now presented with a choice to change it. And because I'm talking about it, chances are quite high that many of you are or will be determined to make a change. Leap of faith. What is leap of faith? Leap of faith is, well, taking a risk, trusting your inner guidance, perhaps trusting this message. Perhaps this is something that you've thought about a long time, and now it's coming to you right, left, and center, and you can't get away, but it's right there. And so the universe is asking you to take a leap of faith. Incidentally, 5 is number of changes, and 7 is enlightenment. To me, that's what it represents to me. So enlightenment often, if not always, comes with changes. It is through changes that we often become enlightened, if we allow it. Because we can go through changes and we can be mad and upset and angry and blame other people, in which case there will be no enlightenment, because the world doesn't do anything to us. This is us creating. And I know different people will have different ideas about that, but at the end of the day, you are a powerful creator. I will say that to the day I die. And the more I am facing my own stuff, the more I realize just how powerful of creators we really are. It's actually quite mind-boggling. So the universe is asking you to take a leap of faith. Take a leap of faith on this new job you are wanting. Take a leap of faith on you expressing something out of you. Taking a leap of faith on you spreading your wings and fly. Whatever spreading your wings and fly means to you. Generally, it means freedom. Freedom means different things to different people. To me, being free is being able to express me. My desire to know more, to the hunger to understand how the universe works, the hunger to see how the mind works. For me, that's freedom, among other things, but that's freedom to me. So I think I'm going to leave this. I didn't realize it was going to go by this quickly. And is there anything else that I want to say? Faith is something you cultivate. Faith isn't something that you just happen to have. I mean, yes, some people have faith, but in order to sustain it, it has to be cultivated. What does it mean to cultivate something? It means to nourish it, to feed it, to give it the right ingredients so that it can grow. Faith takes time to develop. I would say sometimes you have to decide to trust before faith can be cultivated. And I guess I could kind of look at that in various different ways. The words are kind of intermingled together, but that's how it's coming through to me. So for whatever it's worth to you, I think I'm going to leave it at that. Don't be afraid of yourself. We are afraid of ourselves more than anything else, because we are powerful beings. And when we have come to accept that we are not, then we just become connected to that, and that's who we become. That becomes our identity. But most people are afraid of, they're not afraid of not having power. They're afraid of having power, actually. And they're afraid, most people are not afraid of not having success. Most people are afraid of having success. And it's probably familiar to you. If it isn't, look it up. I think it's been documented quite well. But anyway, I think I want to say, I want to leave it at that. And I think that's all I have. The road you are traveling is yours and yours alone. Who came before you matters very little. Who comes after you matters even less. What you do with where you are on your road is dependent on you. So our past shapes us, and our future hasn't happened yet. When we begin to accept us as we are, with all our quirks and insecurities and inadequacies, if we accept that, yes, that's who we are right now, but that can change, then everything begins to just open up and flow. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. I wish you best of luck for the next little while, or always. But until we see each other again, I wish you best of luck. If you would like a private session with me, that information is down below. Also, Vimeo videos, which is 6 months from July to the end of this year, is also down below. I wish you a wonderful month of October, because I'll see you in November. Please take care of yourself. Educate yourself about you. Be passionate about knowing you. And then watch yourself fly. Okay? Observe your thoughts. Thank you once again. See you soon.